The council's observation chamber was silent, an unnatural quiet that weighed down on the delegates. Each alien species, from the towering Valthor to the sleek, bioluminescent Thrasians, exchanged uncertain glances. The projection screen flickered and hummed, its surface catching reflections of the hundreds of anxious eyes locked onto it. At the center of the room, a hologram blinked alive, an unassuming signal at first glance, but one that carried an unspoken, "Wait, humanity's transmission. Is this a joke?" Draxil, the Valthor elder, rumbled, his voice a deep bass that vibrated through the chamber's walls. This cannot be from Earth. The Council had long feared the technology of Earth. Once it had been a weapon of untold destruction, harnessing the power of the stars, bending time, controlling the very fabric of reality itself. The humans had been forbidden from using it, after they nearly destroyed themselves and any reference to their technology had been wiped from galactic memory. Yet here it was, an encrypted signal, a message from humanity. The screen pulsed again, this time revealing a human face. Commander Alara Kane, her face bathed in the cold glow of her ship's bridge, stared out with cold, determined eyes. Her voice came through, steady despite the chaos. To the Galactic Council, this is Earth. We have found a solution. You've underestimated our technology, but you'll need it. Our offer is simple. Cooperate or watch everything burn. The choice is yours. A cold silence gripped the room. Fear began to rise like a wave, unseen, yet all-encompassing. Is this a threat? Asked Sithra, a former ally of Earth now turned, skeptic, her antennae twitching. Yes, came the voice of the Thrasian delegate, but also a promise. The transmission cut, leaving behind a single line of text. We will survive, together or alone. The alien council chamber was alive with tense energy, the gathered species murmuring among themselves as the latest transmission from Earth was projected into the center of the room. The room's holographic projections flickered briefly, displaying the chilling message humanity had sent. It had been hours since Commander Alara Kane's words were broadcasted, and still no one knew how to respond. A part of the council had been in disbelief, unable to comprehend that Earth, a planet they had once considered beneath them, had not only survived the self-inflicted destruction they had once feared, but had also harnessed the very technology they had been warned about. Draxil, the Valthor elder, could not contain the confusion any longer. His tall, muscular form rose from the council's central seat, his voice booming as it echoed through the chamber. This is impossible. We banned this technology. We erased any trace of it after their wars nearly consumed the galaxy. They cannot have it back. They have no right. Sithra, the sleek Thrasian delegate, flicked her multi-segmented antennae in agitation. You do not understand, Draxil. This technology, this human technology, is beyond what any of us could have imagined. It was forbidden for a reason. It was designed to tear apart the very fabric of our universe. But it seems that now, humanity has mastered it. A collective shudder passed through the room, palpable and heavy. The words "tear apart" hung in the air, underscoring the dread each species felt as they remembered the ancient records, the haunting stories of the human conflict and the destructive potential of their creations. They had been warned, but they had not listened. Draxil clenched his fists, the anger on his face clear. We cannot allow them to hold this power. It will mean the end of us all. Earth was already a risk. But now, he trailed off, looking around the chamber, his eyes darkening. We must do what we should have done years ago. We must go to Earth, and we must end it. But we cannot destroy it. Velxar, the Valthor general, interjected. His voice was calm, measured, a stark contrast to the brewing storm in the room. If we do, we risk losing our chance to control it. We must act carefully. This could change everything. Sithra's wings twitched nervously, a sharp screech of metal on metal as she shifted her posture. Do you not understand? It is no longer a question of control. We cannot control it. Humanity, At least some factions of them have evolved far beyond what we ever imagined. If they decide to use this technology to destroy us, we would not stand a chance. The council members shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the growing tension. The very thought of humanity mastering this forbidden technology, of them possibly using it against the council, was terrifying. It was one thing to deal with their primitive weapons, their crude efforts at war, but this, it was a force of nature, one they had once believed would never rise again. We cannot let them have this power, Sithra insisted, her voice now trembling with the weight of her fear. If Earth is left unchecked, it will be the end of us. They must be stopped before they can do what they're threatening. I agree, Draxel growled, his voice low with determination. We must go to Earth. We must destroy what they have. Whatever they think they've unlocked, it is a mistake. It is too dangerous. But Velxar's gaze was fixed on the projection, his expression distant as though weighing something invisible in his mind. What if we are the mistake? What if, in our fear, we've misjudged them? What if this technology can be used to save us? The room went silent. No one had expected such a viewpoint from the usually pragmatic general. His words hung in the air, an unspoken challenge to everything the council believed. The threat from Earth was clear, but Velxar's argument had its own logic. If humanity truly had access to this power, it could change the course of the war. It could turn the tide in favor of the council, putting an end to the Raxai threat and securing peace for the galaxy. This technology, if it is so dangerous, Velxar continued, his voice quieter now, why would they reach out to us with it? They did not launch an attack. They offered us a choice. We could either cooperate or perish. They are not our enemies. They are the last hope for all of us. Sithra's face twisted in disbelief. Hope? From Earth? You want us to trust them? Velxar's sharp eyes turned toward her, a rare flicker of something resembling pity in his gaze. No, Sithra. I want us to survive. And we need their technology to do that. The Raxai are coming. They will destroy everything we've worked for, and if we do not act, it will be too late. Sithra recoiled at the implication. You are suggesting we use their weapon against the Raxai? You want us to unleash this madness on an entire species? It is not madness, Velxar shot back. It is survival, the same as we did during our wars, the same as we will do now, if we must. The debate raged on, voices rising and falling like waves crashing against the cliffs of certainty. Some members of the council argued for peace, for diplomacy, but others were drawn to the potential of Earth's technology, convinced that it was their only chance. In the midst of this, Draxel's voice once again cut through the noise. We cannot risk it. Even if there is a chance that this power could save us, the risk outweighs the benefit. We must go to Earth and destroy it. Velxar's voice was the calm that followed the storm. And what if the cost of destroying Earth's technology is our own destruction? What if, by rejecting their offer, we doom ourselves? Sithra's wings flared in frustration. What choice do we have? We cannot let them continue this madness unchecked. They have already defied our laws, and now they threaten us with their power. The council was fractured, torn between fear and hope, between destruction and the unknown. As the arguments continued, Commander Kane's words echoed in their minds. The choice is yours. Was it a threat, a warning, or something more? They had no answers, only the growing certainty that their past actions, those taken to ensure their safety from humanity, were now threatening their very survival. As the council began to move toward a decision, it was clear that Earth had forced them into a corner. The decision was no longer about whether or not humanity could be trusted. It was about whether the council could afford to risk their survival on the hope that humanity's technology could be controlled. The alien delegates turned to one another, each aware of the weight of what lay ahead. The path they chose would determine not only their fate, but that of the galaxy itself. And on Earth, Commander Alara Kane stood in silence, her gaze fixed on the stars. Her message had been received, and now the council was coming. The game had shifted, and there would be no turning back. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of the projections. Every face in the chamber was locked in a quiet, lingering dread, an unspoken understanding that they were teetering on the edge of an abyss they could not yet comprehend. Draxel's fist slammed against the table, his anger boiling over. "Enough," he shouted. "We will go to Earth, we will stop them. We will end this before it's too late." But even as he spoke the words, doubts crept into his mind. What if they were wrong? What if the humans weren't the enemy? What if the real threat lay not in Earth's technology, but in their own desperation to control it? And with that, the Council made its choice. They would go to Earth. They would confront humanity. And they would do whatever it took to ensure the galaxy's survival. But in doing so, they would awaken something far darker than they could ever have imagined. The debate ended as abruptly as it had begun. The Council was no longer debating. They had made their decision. The mission to Earth was already being planned, and in the shadows of the chamber, one last, chilling truth settled in. No one knew what the consequences would be. They had pushed humanity to the brink, and now they would see what happened when they were forced to rely on what they had feared most. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. The stars outside the observation window stretched into thin, elongated lines as the fleet of the Galactic Council moved through the void, their engines humming with quiet efficiency. At the forefront of the armada, Commander Alara Kane stood at the command deck of the Prometheus, her hand steady on the control console, her expression unreadable. A seasoned leader, she had never shown fear in battle, never faltered when the odds were stacked against her. But now, as they approached Earth's old allies, those who had once trusted humanity only to betray them, she felt the weight of history bearing down on her. The transmission had been clear. The Council was coming. They were on their way to Earth to claim the technology they once banned, to use it or destroy it. But they had underestimated her. Kane knew how to use what they feared most. Not just the weapons, not just the cloaking devices or the gravity defiers, but something much more dangerous: humanity's resolve. Earth had been alone for too long. The galaxy's refusal to accept them, the rejection of their people's potential, had given rise to a force unlike any the universe had seen before. Humanity had learned to survive by their own methods. The old technologies, those that had been forbidden, were now no longer just weapons. They were a means of survival, a statement that humanity would not bow, that they would not be silenced. The holographic display before her flickered momentarily, showing the massive fleets of the Council, all bearing down on Earth. The images were distorted by interference, the distance making it impossible to see the details, but Kane knew they were there. They were coming, and she was ready. "Captain Ruiz," Kane called, her voice calm, measured. "Prepare the fleet for engagement. I want everything ready. They're not coming to negotiate, they're coming to control, and they will need to learn what happens when they underestimate us." Ruiz, standing beside her, nodded. "Aye, Commander. Orders received." She didn't need to say more. Her crew knew the stakes. They had been through worse. Kane had led them through battles, through crises, through wars that should have been lost. They trusted her, and right now, more than ever, that trust was going to be their greatest weapon. "Activate the cloaking systems. All ships, take formation. No one gets through without our say-so." The hum of the cloaking devices filled the air, and the Prometheus became a ghost in space. But Kane knew that the Council wasn't just coming for Earth's technology. They were coming for her people, for humanity's place in the galaxy. They had turned their backs on Earth when it had needed them most. Now, Earth would have its reckoning. Back at the Council's flagship, the Valthor fleet commander, Velxar, stood at the helm, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the deep, endless black of space. He had been silent for hours, reflecting on the choice the Council had made. He had never doubted that Earth's technology would be dangerous. The records spoke for themselves. Records of a war that nearly wiped out their entire species, of weapons so powerful that even the mightiest fleets had been reduced to dust. But there was something different about Commander Kane. He had watched, her face on the transmission. She wasn't just a commander. She was a symbol of a people who had been cast aside and left to rot, only to rise from the ashes. She wasn't like the others. There was no fear in her eyes, only a cold, focused resolve. It was that look, that unwavering confidence that troubled him the most. Velxar had seen many leaders, many who wielded power with arrogance, many who believed they had all the answers. But Kane's calm, her focus, it was different. It wasn't arrogance. It was a quiet strength, and that made her dangerous. Dangerous in ways that even the Council hadn't fully anticipated. "How close are we?" Velxar asked, his voice low, his eyes still fixed on the stars. "A few hours, Commander," the tactical officer replied. "We'll be in Earth's orbit soon." He turned sharply, the tension in his features visible. "And the humans, their fleet?" "Cloaked, Commander. But we've detected unusual energy signatures from their ships. They've prepared something. We can't be sure what, but it's not like anything we've encountered before." Velxar's expression darkened. "Of course not. Earth has always been unpredictable." He straightened. "Send word to the Council. Prepare them for the worst." Kane stood in the war room aboard the Prometheus, staring at the map of Earth's solar system. The Council's fleet was nearing. The confrontation was inevitable. It would come down to one moment, one decision that could change the course of the galaxy forever. "Commander," a voice called from behind her. It was Lieutenant Mirov, one of the fleet's senior officers. "We've detected movement from the Council's fleet. They're close. It's time." Kane turned slowly, her eyes focused. "You've been with me since the beginning, Mirov. You know what we're about to do." Mirov nodded, his jaw clenched. "I do, Commander. I'm with you." "And the others?" "They're ready," Mirov said. "The whole fleet's ready." Kane took a deep breath. "Then let's show them who they're dealing with." The first salvo came without warning. The Council's flagship fired the opening shot, a burst of energy so powerful that it temporarily blinded their sensors. Kane's fleet had expected it, and the Prometheus was already on the move. They had, cloaked, but this was different. The Council had figured out a way to detect their ships, to break through their defenses. Kane cursed under her breath. "They've adapted faster than we thought. Get us out of here full throttle." The Prometheus surged forward, its engines flaring to life, its cloaking system flickering as it dodged incoming fire. The Council's fleet was relentless. Every ship fired as one. Each shot a message, a declaration of force. But Kane's fleet wasn't like theirs. They had learned to fight without the galactic regulations, without the constraints of the old world. The Prometheus jerked as a blast scraped. Across its shields, the sound reverberating through the hull. The crew scrambled, but Kane was already moving, her eyes locked onto the tactical display. "Deploy the EMPs. Now," she commanded. A flash of blinding light erupted from their ships, a pulse that crackled through the vacuum of space. The Prometheus was shielded from the worst of it, but the blast hit the Council's flagship directly, disabling its weapons and systems for a precious few seconds. "Now's our chance," Kane shouted. "All ships converge on the flagship. We take them down or we don't take them at all." Her fleet responded instantly, moving in perfect formation, their weapons primed. The Council had thrown the first punch, but humanity would be the one to deliver the final blow. This was their time. As the battle raged on, Velxar stood on the bridge of his flagship, his hands clenched in tight fists. The humans had made their move, but he had underestimated them, underestimated the strength, the ferocity that they had, kept hidden for so long. They were fighting back with everything they had, and in that moment Velxar knew that this would not be a simple conquest. This was no longer just about technology. This was about survival. "We're losing control," the tactical officer reported. "Their fleet is coordinating like a single entity. Our weapons are down, our shields are failing." Velxar's face remained impassive. He had never expected it to be easy, but this was beyond what he had anticipated. "Initiate backup protocols. We cannot afford to lose Earth. Not now." But even as he spoke, the Prometheus moved in for the final blow. its weapons charged and ready to unleash a devastating barrage. In the heat of battle, Commander Kane watched her fleet fight like they were fighting for everything that had been taken from them, for everything they had lost. The Council had underestimated them, and now they would feel the consequences. But Kane knew this wasn't over. The Council would not retreat so easily. This was just the beginning of a war that would shape the future of the galaxy, and Earth would no longer be a silent, forgotten corner of the universe. They would rise, they would fight, and they would survive. The Prometheus locked its weapons on the Council flagship. With a final deafening roar, it unleashed everything. They had Earth's last final stand. The energy beams shot through the darkness, tearing apart the Council's defenses. It was a gamble, a dangerous one. But as Kane watched the Council flagship disintegrate into the void, she knew one thing, for certain. Earth had just become a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never forget. The battle had been brutal. For hours, the two fleets had clashed in the void, each side unleashing everything they had. The soundless conflict was a chaotic dance of fire and destruction, where humanity's newly reignited fury met the cold, calculating might of the Galactic Council. Commander Alara Kane stood at the center of the Prometheus's command deck, her gaze fixed on the view ahead. The battle was far from over, but there was a distinct shift in the air, an energy that buzzed through her very bones. She had always known that the war wasn't just about technology. It wasn't even about survival. It was about identity. Humanity had been rejected, discarded, and left to rot in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. And now they were standing at the precipice of history. The Council's flagship had been disabled, but its forces were still alive, still fighting with everything they had left. Even now, scattered pockets of the fleet regrouped, launching surprise counterattacks. But Kane's crew, her people, were relentless. The flickering hologram of a Council officer appeared in the center of the command room, a desperate, shaking figure, their last hope for diplomacy, or at least a ceasefire. "This is Velxar, Supreme Commander of the Valthor fleet," the voice crackled through the intercom. The once proud alien commander was now a broken shadow, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We surrender. We cannot continue this war. The loss is too great." Kane's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. She had prepared for this moment, this potential, negotiation, this possibility. But it did not come with relief, not yet. She hadn't come this far to bargain for peace. She had come to make a statement. Earth would never be subjugated again. Earth would never be cast aside. The silence on the deck was suffocating as the crew waited for her command. Kane looked up from the hologram, her expression steely. "I don't care about your surrender, Velxar," she said coldly. "You've lost, and your Council has shown us nothing but fear and betrayal. Your fleets are nothing now." But even as her words struck hard, a knot of hesitation formed in her chest. This moment, this power had come at a tremendous cost. Her people had suffered, sacrificed, lost lives, and now she was faced with the choice of how far she would go. The stakes had escalated beyond anything she had ever imagined. Earth had risen, but was it enough to break centuries of distrust and control? Her voice was steady, though a quiet storm raged inside her. "We're taking control of the galaxy now, Velxar, and there will be no turning back." In the quiet of the war room, Kane's fingers hovered over the console, her decision weighing heavily on her. Earth's technology was now fully in her hands. The weapons, the cloaking devices, the gravity manipulators, the power to bend time itself. It was all there. It was all hers. But for all the power she had gained, there was an emptiness in the pit of her stomach. What was it all for? "Commander," a voice broke through her thoughts. It was Mirov, one of her most trusted officers. "The Council has activated a self-destruct sequence on their remaining ships. They're trying to take us down with them." Kane's breath caught in her throat. The desperation, the fear, it was palpable. These were not the actions of a defeated army. These were the actions of an empire that had realized its own end was inevitable. The decision to destroy everything in their wake, no matter the cost, spoke volumes about the Council's true nature. "Shut it down," she snapped. "All ships, I want full containment of their self-destruct sequences. We're not letting them take anything with them." Her orders were immediate, sharp, cutting through the tension that had already gripped the command deck. Her people responded swiftly, but as Kane turned back to the war room screen, the fear of what the Council was capable of began to take root. They had nothing left to lose, nothing to fall back on, except a final act of destruction. This wasn't just a military failure. It was an ideological collapse, a system-wide collapse of everything the Council had stood for. "They won't give up easily," Velxar's voice crackled through again, trembling now with an edge of despair. "But it's over. You've won." Kane watched the flickering image of the alien commander, now powerless, now broken. "No, Velxar, we haven't won yet. We will never win until we've rebuilt what you and your Council destroyed." Hours passed, and the Prometheus drifted in the black void, surrounded by the remnants of the Galactic Council's fleet. The flagship was nothing but debris now. The other ships, weakened by the relentless barrage, were on the brink of collapse, their last few defiant attempts to retaliate fading into silence. Kane looked out from the command deck, her thoughts heavy. The war was over. The Galactic Council had been defeated, but what had it cost her people? What had it cost Earth? "Commander," Mirov said again, drawing her out of her thoughts. "We've received a transmission from the Valthor. They're asking for terms." "Terms?" Kane scoffed. "What's left to negotiate?" Mirov hesitated before responding, sensing the weight of her words. "They want peace. They're offering us a chance to join the Galactic Order once again. They're willing to recognize Earth as a legitimate power, no more bans on our technology." Kane's gaze hardened. She knew what the Council's peace meant. It meant submission. It meant Earth would be forced to play by their rules once again. It would be a temporary reprieve, and then they would come for Earth again. They would always come for Earth. "You think they're offering us peace?" she muttered bitterly. "No, they're offering us subjugation dressed in the clothes of diplomacy." But even as she spoke, the weight of the offer settled into her mind. It was the last vestige of the Council's power. It was their final attempt to pull Earth into their fold, to force them to submit, to deny the independence that humanity had fought for. And it was tempting. Perhaps too tempting. "Do we even have a choice?" Mirov asked, his voice soft but filled with the unspoken question that haunted them all. What was the future of humanity? What would the galaxy look like if they chose peace? What would happen if they chose revenge? Kane's eyes narrowed as she thought back to everything that had brought them to this moment. The years of betrayal, the loss of countless lives, the bitter, silent isolation. And now, the Council, broken and defeated, dared to offer humanity the one thing they had never wanted: acceptance. She looked at Mirov, her eyes blazing with cold certainty. "No," she said, her voice resolute. "We are not their subordinates. We are not their slaves. We're not going to join their order. We will build our own. Let them know. Earth doesn't beg for permission. We make our own destiny." The following days, Kane's fleet worked tirelessly to secure the remnants of the Council's fleet, stripping away its technology and ensuring the remnants of their empire were buried deep in the ashes of the stars. The Council's broken. Leadership was scattered, fleeing into the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Some, like Velxar, had accepted their fate and retired into the darkness. Others, more dangerous, would come back one day, hungry for revenge. But for now, Earth stood at the dawn of a new era. Kane sat alone in the war room, staring at the view screen that displayed the once proud Council fleets drifting into oblivion. It was over. The galactic power structure had crumbled. The galaxy would never be the same again. Earth had risen from the depths of exile to reclaim its rightful place. The future was uncertain, the galaxy in turmoil. But Kane knew one thing: humanity would never again be ignored, never again be cast aside. Earth had proven it had the strength to survive. It had proven it could stand up to the galaxy's mightiest powers, and as Commander Alara Kane stood at the helm of the Prometheus, she knew that humanity's journey had just begun. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but now they were no longer alone in the dark. Earth had the power to shape the future, one that would belong to humanity, and they would fight to keep it.